Welcome to the 136th annual meeting of the Holstein Association USA. Again, I want to thank our friends from Minnesota and South Dakota for a great convention and so many different activities to bring people here that maybe not traditionally come. And I'm going to follow the theme of the Data and Innovation Summit here in my talk. Tomorrow's gavel will bring to close 19 combined years of formal service to both the Wisconsin Holstein Association and Holstein Association USA. It's been my good fortune to have served my fellow breeders in a variety of leadership positions over the past 19 years, with 12 as a board officer for those two associations and 13 years on the executive committee. Leaders are not born, leaders are nurtured, leaders are developed, and leaders are grown. My leadership journey took root because of my hard work and dairy farm parents that you'll see in that picture with my wife and I. This leadership journey continued to grow because Wisconsin Holstein Association and the Holstein Association USA have the best junior programs in agriculture. That journey began with me, with the only March calf born on our farm in 1982, and that was Ran Rose Andy Angel April, shown in the picture with that little boy, yours truly. Shown on the screen is the cover of my distinguished junior membership book prepared for the 1993 National Convention. To this day, it's the best book I ever wrote. If you look closely at that photo, that's that little calf and boy have grown up, Ran Rose Andy Angel April, now age 11. She has no halter and she's actually trying to lick me. As my mom took this photo over a rock ledge, I never needed a halter with that cow. We were like a puppy and a little boy. Corey the kid and April the cow went on a ride together as I grew into a man. The journey began to blossom because Manitowoc County Holstein breeders like the late Bill Borgwart, shown on the screen, of Sunnyside Farms and Valders, Wisconsin, Wisconsin Holstein Association members, and Holstein USA breeders believed in me, encouraged me to run, and elected me to serve. As an adult, my leadership journey with the Holstein Association and the county, state, and national level began at age 32, and it draws to a close in my 49th year. Thank you for an honor of a lifetime. I've become a better person for having served you. Look around this room. Who among us should be lifted up to be the next generation of leaders? Shown in this image on the left there is our extended Geiger family right before my father's passing right after the 2019 National Holstein Convention. And on the right are some of Manitowoc County's best and brightest youth. Some of them have graduated to adults, and there's one youngster in the middle there that's certainly active in junior Holstein programming. It was a playful picture we took at the 2016 National Convention when our friends from New York hosted. My experiences as a breeder, editor, and director have allowed me to see dairy markets in a unique way. Given our Dairy Data and Innovation Conference, I'm going to share some thoughts with dairy product markets and dairy genetic markets. These are experiences that combine my thoughts from growing up as a farm boy in Reedsville, Wisconsin, having traveled 46 of the 50 US states, after doors were opened for me through my experience as a distinguished junior member finalist with the Holstein Association USA, and that program is now celebrating its 100th year. Dairy has a bright future. From my perspective, the sun continues to rise on the dairy brand. In the US, domestic dairy consumption is now $59 billion. That's the largest number in our lifetime. Domestic dairy consumption is at the highest level since 1960. US consumers eat 655 pounds of milk per capita, and what that number means is if you took 655 pounds of milk from your farm and converted it in dairy products, that's how USDA measures that number. Over the past 10 years, that number has grown by an incredible 52 pounds. Overall, we've experienced a 22% growth rate in dairy product consumption since 1975. And most importantly, dairy is the biggest category in the grocery chain. We're riding a cheese horse. Mark Stevenson at University of Wisconsin shared that term with me, and it's exactly right. And it's fitting to be here in the I-29 corridor, and it's been growing tremendously because of cheese, and this corridor has been growing tremendously because of its manufacturing prowess. Cheese has been on a constant growth mode since 1994. In the past 20 years, cheese has grown from 28 pounds to 38 pounds per capita. And people ask, can Americans eat more cheese? So if you look at France, Germany, Greece, and some other countries in Europe, that number is at 50 pounds. I did a little comparison here too, just comparing 2010 to 2021 so that people could get a better perspective on the top cheese states. Wisconsin and California hold down the first and second position, but there's been some changes, of course, over time here. Idaho, New Mexico, South Dakota, and Ohio have all climbed faster than the likes of Minnesota, New York, Iowa, and Pennsylvania. And over the past 11 years, Missouri and Nebraska dropped out of the top 10. If you're in the dairy industry, you know this story. Overall, dairy is bright, but fluid milk has not been doing so great. That's because consumers are eating their dairy, and that has put fluid milk in a tailspin. We have a lot of information in the popular press about school milk. We have a lot of work to do there. But there's another issue here. And this is, when I learned this part, it was very interesting. Milk and cereal go together. They're complements like French fries and ketchup, all right? If you have French fries, almost every kid grabs ketchup. So 1/3 of fluid milk is poured on cold breakfast cereal. And cold breakfast cereal is not doing well right now. It's down 17% on per capita consumption here in the US, and that's according to BIS World. And those lost cold breakfast cereals have cost fluid milk dearly. So in 2000, fluid milk represented 33% of all the milk that came off our farms. That number is now fallen below 20%, regrettably. While fluid milk is no longer growing, dairy exports are bounding skyward. Consider this. The United States Dairy Export Council was first formed in 1995. And at that time, we were exporting about 2 to 3% of our milk supply. Fast forward 27 years, and dairy product exports are about to overtake fluid milk volume. And it's important to note that dairy exports have not caused the decline of fluid milk. These are two independent events. Digging a bit deeper, the recent growth in dairy exports has been profound. 10 years ago, U.S. dairy product exports accounted for 13% of U.S. milk production. Today, that number is 17%, and that means that all 9 million of our dairy cows, we'll just use round numbers, are working about 5 to 6 days a month to fill export orders. Now, if you're on the western seaboard, your cows are producing more export products than, say, the central U.S. or the Midwest. Keep in mind that dairy product exports grew from 13 to 17%, all while the U.S. milk production grew by 16% during that same time window. Here's a few more snapshots on dairy exports, and if you want, take a picture of this slide. If you want the slide deck, I'll be happy to share it with you. In 2020, sales were $6.5 billion, and last year we set a record at $7.75 billion. And the volume also set a record. 2020, the old volume mark was 2.44, and that has gone to 2.69 million pounds. As we grow as dairy exporters, we want to spend more time doing value-added products because that helps bolster your milk checks back home. CEO Meyer talked about Butterfat being back in a big way, and it is in a big way. Consider this chart. This is USDA data from 1924 to 2021, and that's Butterfat. Milk composition is evolving to meet market demand, and market demand is consumers, both here and abroad. In reviewing the USDA data on the screen, Butterfat levels held in a tight window from 3.65 to 3.69% from 1966 to 2010. That's that little zigzag line there. As a breakout took place, Butterfat moved to 3.71%, busted out to 3.84%, and forged ahead to 3.92% in 2019. And Butterfat in the national bulk tank went to over 4% last year. and pushed past the previous historic high of 3.98% at the close of World War II in 1944 and 1945. In 2010, when the milk component boom began, 89% of the U.S. semen sales were Holstein bulls and another 9% were Jersey sires. That yielded a 98% market share for those two major breeds. Fast forward to 2021, and those two breeds still account for 98% of all dairy bovine semen sales. However, the Holstein number is now at 83%, and Jerseys are at about 16% shown in the figure. Those metrics represent 95% of the U.S. semen sales based on data from the National Association of Animal Breeders. So, Jeffrey, we got some tables here. We had some charts earlier, if you were on a little bit pun there for those that were in the data conference. Despite Jersey's growth, Holsteins represent at least 4 out of 5 cows in the United States. Given that breed makeup, there's more at play on moving the national milk fat level from 3.66 to 4% in just 4 years. Data from DHI documents the milk fat percentage change by breed in that top table, table 1 on the screen there. From 2010 to 2020, Holsteins on production shifted from 3.65 to 3.96%. While DHI data isn't publicly released yet, as you heard CEO Meyer, for those Holsteins and Holstein USA programs, we went over 4% in 2021. Jerseys also moved by that time, but not as much, 4.69 to 4.82%. There's been a long debate among dairy farmers, breed for percentages or breed for pounds. When it comes to the bottom line in your milk checks, pounds are what matter, and that's why we show the data in table 2. Overall, pounds of components are the pay price metric for 92% of the US milk checks, because you're paid in multiple component prices, largely pounds of fat and pounds of protein, multiplied by the monthly pay price. This is one of the reasons Holstein breeders have leaned towards improving milk density, and the same reason why Jersey breeders have focused on improving overall pounds of milk. When looking at US production from 2010 to 2021, total milk output climbed from 192.8 to 226.3 billion pounds. That's a growth rate of about 17.3%. So that's the number many of us grew up tracking. What's milk doing? I contend what we should really be watching is what butterfat is doing and what protein is doing. So from 2021 to 2023, total milk fat production climbed from 7 to 9.3 billion pounds. That's a 27.6% growth rate in butterfat, and it stands to reason that dairy market analysts should be tracking this more closely on monthly reports than total pounds of milk, because ultimately people are eating their dairy products. I also want to show the shift in protein. It's not as dramatic as butterfat, but equally important. Holstein breed moved from 3.03 to 3.12 during the 2010 to 2020 window. Jerseys grew by about the same percentage, moving from 3.6 to 3.68. For Holsteins, pounds of milk grew from 781 to 882 pounds, and that's a 13% improvement. As for the reason, most nutritionists will share that changing milk fat levels via ration formulation is far easier endeavor than it is for protein. If that scientific hypothesis holds true, there's something else at play, and that, of course, is genetics. These days, the genetic equation involves a triple play. The triple play is genomics, sex semen, and beef on dairy. The wide scale of genomic testing on farms has accelerated genetic gains in replacement herd. Consider this, it only took 12 months for dairy farmers to sample 1 million genomic tests from March of 2021 to February of 2022. That's impressive growth considering that from 2008 to 2021, a 13-year window, it took us to run 5 million genomic tests. The change in milk components will only continue given consumers are eating their dairy products, placing constant incentives in dairy producer milk checks on higher solids. That, of course, will hold true if consumer demand continues to take the current patterns that it is, and I believe that certainly will take place. Better cows and new dairy products. When I talk to non-dairy audiences, I often share this statement: the dairy cow, more specifically the Holstein, is the most genetically researched animal on the planet next to the human being. Think about that. This genetic research will fuel new dairy product development. We often talk about A2A2 milk, and that's just the beginning of the new products. Data and its accuracy favors large breed populations. To that end, 86% of all the genomic tests run since 2008 have been on Holsteins. Jerseys account for another 12%, and all other breeds account for 2%. The world not only believes in U.S. dairy products, but it also believes in U.S. and North American genetics. International semen sales topped 22 million units for the 5th straight year. Also, the 30.5 million unit sales total posted in 2021 was a record for the 6th straight year. Overall, 93.4% of those 30.5 million units came from Holstein bulls, and that's according to data from the National Association of Animal Breeders. Sex semen has been widely adopted by dairy farmers. Last year, the National Association of Animal Breeders shared the number of doses of sex semen last year grew by 700,000 units. This slide here that you're seeing on the screen shows another data set involving some 27 million births from 1981 to 2014. And they were looking, this data set was done to recalibrate sire calving ease. And you could see over time, these were animals that were first calf heifers, and you could see how that ratio was altered as we look to get the best genetics from our young animals and also to improve the calving situation. Sex semen brought the third triple play, beef semen on dairy. Beef semen sales in the U.S. have exploded as we better try to manage our heifer replacement inventories. These beef semen sales are to dairy farmers, not cattle ranchers. Consider the numbers on the screen, and you can see them there in the big change. We have that in bar chart there from 1979 to 2021. In 2017, we had 2.5 million units. It grew to 4, 5.8, 7.2, and now 8.7 million units in 2021. That's a 248% growth rate in 5 years. Given all this additional beef semen, one would think we need less AI bulls in service. However, the exact opposite holds true. At the onset of genomic testing, the average age of a sire of a young bull, so the next generation, was 6.8 years. Over the next 5 years, that number dropped to less than 3 years. Just like young cows, young bulls don't make as just like young cows don't make as much milk, young bulls don't make as much semen. As a result, the number of bulls declared for active AI service climbed from 3,382 in April of 2014 to 5,676 sires in April 2022. And this slide is courtesy of Jay Weicker, the CEO of the National Association of Animal Breeders. Through all these seas of change, the Holstein cow has been the foundation of serving consumer needs here in the United States. If we keep an eye on the horizon, our Holstein cow will continue to be the market leader and meet the needs of breeders around the globe and consumers across this great planet. Remember, dairy is the largest category in the grocery store. Dairy has a bright future. As I draw to a close, I want to thank CEO John Meyer for his visionary leadership, CFO Barbara Kasna for her watchful eye on finances, and to all the staff at One Holstein Place and those representatives and classifiers in the field serving our members, we thank you for helping us grow our business together. To my fellow directors, both past and present, you have brought vigor to our organization and helped shape Holstein Association USA's future in so many ways. To Jonathan, it has been an honor to have you as a partner, as vice president. You are so very ready to lead this organization, and it will be an honor to hand you the gavel tomorrow afternoon when you become president. For me, one simple principle has guided my service on the board of directors, and I believe this principle will set our staff and board up for future success. At my first board meeting as a rookie director, the late Larry Tandy, who was president, walked up to me during the first break and shared this advice with a rookie. Remember the member. Remember the member. That's all you need to know. Remember the member. It's that simple for servant leaders. Thank you.